Okie doke. Next thing, I had to fix two things. One was that the sensitivity in the game menu was not capped when you go down. It would go below 0. So all I had to do, easy peasy, clamp it. Cake. It was already clamped upwards. I just needed to clamp it with a lower bound. Really, I wasn't clamping it before. I had this max sensitivity variable, and for some reason clamping wasn't in my brain, even though I know you can do it. And I was just checking and doing a select. Are you shitting me? Tonsil stone. Be right back. Let me throw this in the sink. That is vile. Hold on. I get them on occasion, and they're extremely annoying. I want to get my tonsils out, but not yet. I don't have the money to just fucking do that. So for some reason I was doing a select instead, and I was checking to see if it was greater than, and if it was, I was clamping it, but I wasn't clamping it with a lower bound. Solution is just do a clamp. It automatically has a lower bound and an upper bound. Easy peasy. You just saw that works. The other thing was this. Whenever we're in any of these menus, and if I click and drag anywhere, I could still look around. Same here or here. These are all technically the same widget, so if it happens in any of these, it would happen the same. It would happen here as well. Ooh, this is one thing I need to fix. Maybe I have to focus it. I don't like that when I'm in this menu, the cursor goes like this. I think it's because the game mode is UI and game. I think this is happening. Let me do that really quickly. Right. I think that's the reason. So we'll just set this to instead set input mode UI only. And this is just self, which widget, this widget that we've already created. Sick. I don't like clicking around here, and one, it's good that I can't look around in the game, but I don't like the cursor disappearing, because then if you click and drag, the cursor would disappear, but when you release it, it's back where it was. So you'd have to move your mouse back. So like if you did that and dragged really far down, and then you released, your cursor would still be in the middle of your screen. So you'd have to readjust your arm, which is just an inconvenience that's stupid. So fixed. I was just using the wrong input mode. So cake. But how I do this is, it turns out there's another thing in the player controller that I didn't know, and it is set input or set ignore look input. This guy, and we can set to true to ignore the mouse motion, and thus it'll let you click, but it will ignore the mouse motion. So if you're in a widget and the widget's in focus, then your cursor moves around, and you're set to show cursor. Your cursor will move around and not your player. But when you click, it will still let you look around in the game. Even if, well, actually, maybe the only reason was because, no, I think all of mine were doing it. Well, shit. I should have checked this first, because if I fixed that and that was the solution to the whole thing, then I would have been good. But I don't think it was. I think there was another part of it too. And it was that I have to, whenever a widget opens, I still have to set to ignore that input. And so what I was doing was, we're in the player controller here. So for the game widget, what I would do is when we create the widget and we put it in focus, what we would do is set ignore look input and put this to true. And then anywhere whenever I was deleting a widget, so like not actually in this one, but like in this one, this would be whenever it gets toggled the other way and it gets hidden, I would go in and then set ignore look input and then put it to false. and then do that for all my other widgets too, all of them. But for some reason, that was double dipping. It wasn't working. It was like it's like it was setting it sets that in the player controller. But long story short, for some reason it wasn't working. It was not working, but when I went in the player and then I added a little mouse button thing and it would go to the player controller and then stop ignoring, it would work. So I would be in a widget like this, and then I would open this thing up, or no, I would be here and I would close that initial widget, and I couldn't move my mouse. Like I would move my mouse and nothing would happen, even though in the logic in the game menu that I just closed, which when you start the game it's the team game menu because the host has to pick the team. So he picks the game and then he has to pick the team. It prompts you to pick that. So when you pick a team, you should be able to look around, but it wasn't, even though the team widget when you click the resume button was going to the player controller, which is the player controller that owns this, and then turning the ignore off so that it stopped ignoring, and it was getting called last too, but it still wasn't working. I had a guess that maybe I should handle this in the player controller, and instead of some things going straight to the player, or instead of the player going to the player controller and this going to the player controller, and then the player controller doing it to itself, maybe if I just have everybody go to the player instead and do it all through there, I could have them all just go to the player controller. Excuse me, sorry, no, that's what I was doing. For some reason, it felt like that wasn't going to work, and that I could do it this way. You know, actually, after this video, I'm going to just delete this and see if it works by default. And then maybe I'm just talking stupid shit. But basically, I added a function in the player. That way, instead of having to go and cast, well, we still had to cast, but instead of doing this stuff manually everywhere, I just called this function in the player from there. What do? We say, hey, should we be ignoring right now? If we should, well then, if we're not ignoring, start ignoring. But if we are, don't do anything. If we shouldn't ignore and we want to turn it off, if we are ignoring, stop. But if we already aren't, then don't do anything. I think somehow it was like setting it to be true. So, I think that was the issue. It was, so I don't think it mattered actually where we put this logic. It was that it doesn't make sense. If you set a boolean true somewhere and then you pass the address of that somewhere else and it sets it to true, it's still true. You don't have to unset it twice. But for some reason it felt like it was being double set. It just wasn't working still. Maybe I'm just a stupid, and it was, well, honestly, the problem is I don't know why that wasn't working. So, because once I changed it to do this, all I did was I literally did find references like this, and it had a whole bunch of places. Now it doesn't have a whole bunch of places because instead they're referencing this. Each one of these locations was getting the player controller and then setting IgnoreLookInput to be true or false if the widget was being destroyed. And everything looked to be calling at the right time, and it just wasn't working. And now it is. So it's very odd. I'll delete this function after I commit this because it works now. And then I'll see if I don't need it. Because if I don't need a function, I don't need calls. Okay, it's logic I don't need. I was just stupid and I don't know, maybe I clicked the wrong thing on some of them and I just too tired to remember because I gotta go to sleep. Or too tired to figure it out. Or too tired to notice that I made the mistake. So we'll see. I mean, now it works. So, and now it's even better because in the controller we just swapped this to be game only when we're focusing on the game, and that fixed the mouse. So we have a working settings menu. Graphics, boop, 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 boop. Got these modes, resolution, sick, controls, maximum sensitivity. That. Minimum sensitivity, or well, yeah, sure, minimum. Yep. We can type it in, 10. Boom. Okie doke. I can drag and click around in any of these. These are the same menu technically. This one is not, but still same thing. So I'm gonna delete that and see, but I'm first gonna commit because everything's working right now. So maybe it's just inefficiency that I can remove. So, but that's that. So did I change that? Fix being able to look around with menu open. What did I do since? Oh, swapped game menu from UI plus game focus to UI only. This fixed clicking outside the widget. Alright, fixed how clicking outside the widget would hide the mouse cursor. Isn't visually pleasing. Sure, I'll just say that. That's it. Simple enough. Sick.